2 in it. So Nightmare on Elm Street 2 was always sort of the giveaway. Like it was always free on television, or so therefore like a lot of people saw that first, and it was their first experience in Elm Street, and those people actually love the movie. And it's the same way in
we got audio.
Okay. And then
I guess there was no sound on any of us.
Oh really? Oh, then I can tell that story again.
Sorry.
So now,
okay, are we starting from the beginning? Sorry.
We blame the young kid for that.
It's going now. It's good.
Okay, just go ahead and do the intro, I guess.
Yeah,
we'll start.
So if you can hear us now, we're here. The rest of the crew, forget about them. We got Mark Patton with us. Everybody knows the rest of the crew. Nathan Thomas Milliner, contract. Keith, Jared, and Seth. But tonight it's all about Mark. So excited to have you here.
Thanks.
Yeah. Hopefully the sound's working now. Mark was in the middle of a pretty good story about the distro of Elm Street 2. And I saw it on HBO. And I guess it was 86 when it premiered. Because the night that it premiered, it was on at like 7, I guess. And then they showed Nightmare 1 right after it, which was odd. Why wouldn't they show 1 then 2? But so for a while I thought Nightmare 2, because I was 6. I thought Nightmare 2 was the first one,
right?
And then Heather was in the second one. So, but yeah, Nightmare 2 was my
it's
intro.
Funny because it was released in England. 2 was released first, and then a lot of people thought that Elm Street was the prequel to Nightmare on Elm Street 2. So that kind of makes sense, I guess. I mean, it's whatever you see first is what's I think most important to you. And I find that people who saw Nightmare on Elm Street 2 primarily, that was their first Elm Street movie, generally like it a lot. And then, of course, they're usually very young, like you were. It's amazing the amount of 6-year-olds that got to watch Elm Street.
I mean, my mom was. She was a big horror fan, so she wanted to watch it. She fell asleep, and I'm sitting there as a 6-year-old, just eyes glued to the TV, watching Freddy and Kim and you, and fell in love with Kim Myers when I was 6 years old. She probably started my redhead fascination.
I think she's done that for a lot of people, actually.
Oh my God.
I find out when I put her picture up online, because Kim is a very private person, and she only she doesn't have any social media presence or anything like that, and she only travels with me. So, and I really know that the only reason she goes is for me, and to promote my stuff or whatever. She's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful friend to me. But whenever I post her picture, it's like I get like 200 guys who are like, where can I find her? It's like that they post their undying love to Kimmy all the time. But she's really just not interested in that aspect of show business at all. So, and I say good for her. She stands very true with what she believes. So.
It's hard to stay off social media these days for anybody.
Oh, it is amazing. I mean, like, she really doesn't do it. I mean, like, we email and talk to each other on the phone, but I had never seen her sit down and, fumble through Facebook or any of that kind of stuff. No, and she doesn't post anything. I mean, I think she has an account, and I think it has 7 pictures on it, and it's very difficult to find it. There's a picture of Molly, her dog. That's about it. So, anyway.
I think that's awesome. Oh, there's an ugly sound again. So, yeah, I was saying earlier before you were able to get on the show with us about. I watched last night. Of course, I watched Freddy's Revenge, which I've seen so many times. But I also watched the short segment in Never Sleep Again. For Nightmare 2, which is, I love that documentary quite a bit, but that part of it was kind of bad in a few ways, because you were barely featured in it, and you were the star of the show. in Nightmare 2. You know, it was a lot of that Jack Shoulder. Uh, comes off as a really strange guy. But I was watching and what you said about the role reversal, playing the female role. I never thought of that ever, honestly, growing up. I was telling Nate that between you and Heather from Nightmare 1, you guys were both heroes of mine growing up because I compare Jesse's story to almost a tortured, cursed werewolf kind of story. You know, you got this thing inside you, and
Yeah.
and I didn't identify with it, but I kind of like saw it differently than other people, and then I didn't know about the undertones until
Right.
the documentary came out. And my brother's gay. He's like, "You never noticed that?" I'm like, "No, what?"
Well, when you see it when you're 6 or 7 years old.
Well, no, but I watched it for 20 years plus, or almost 30 years before that documentary came out, and I still never noticed it. I don't know what it does about me, but
the thing is that that's the way that coding works, though, for the most part, is it's coded towards gay people to pick it up.
Okay.
And what happens in that kind of situation is like not everybody who picks up the subtext is gay, but a lot of them were, and a lot of them actually were in the closet probably then at that time, like when they're 14 or 15 years old, and they start recognizing this stuff. It's like, wow, why is that poster of a boy on the wall in a boy's room? Do you know what I mean? I mean, I even have enough sense to know that you would have Farrah Fawcett's picture on the wall, not Brad Pitt's, if you're like supposedly this straight American teenager.
Right.
But it was all done very purposely. And then as we got further and further into it, and we'll probably talk about that later tonight, then you realize, there was the set decorator's name was Dwayne, and the prop person's name is hand prop was Barbara. And those are two people that really should be talked to, and we couldn't find them for Scream Queen. But they had a whole little game going on that was, I think that they thought was quite personal. But they didn't, I don't think they'd had enough experience in film to realize that if you have like a cultish fan base, they know everything that's in. I mean, I would never make a movie again and not know that every prop that I had symbolized. Never. Because I didn't realize that people paid so much attention to what is going on in, say, your bedroom or on the walls, or somebody watches the film 100 times, and there are a lot of people who've done that. They're looking for certain things, and it just tells you how powerful filmmaking is, because it all matters ultimately in the end. Even if you don't think you see it, you're seeing it anyway. Like we just found like a Easter egg in Coach Snyder's office, right, and where there's a swastika flag. Now, I had no idea it was there. Do you know what I mean? But it's right behind his head. Mm-hmm. And once you see it's there, you know it's there. Mm-hmm. And I know that had Jack known that it was there, he would have never filmed it. Do you know what I mean? So people who are compatriots, like, they slip little things in, and it actually kind of it means a lot. So I would next time, if there is a next time, I would be very careful with my props.
Yeah, I've never noticed the flag.
Around. It sounds like they were fucking around with set pieces a lot.
Well, I noticed this time watching it, I've seen the movie 1,000 times growing up. I saw it at 12. And this time I was really paying attention to all that stuff too. And the art direction is kind of, it's not, I felt that they didn't have a big budget for it. So I read up on it, and they said that he did. And the art department, even one guy left the art department, and maybe the person you were talking about was a replacement, because they said the budget just wasn't there. They were just pushing that movie out so fast that the art direction was very minimal. And maybe it even probably makes that stuff even jump out even more so. Like the no chick sign and the probe and all those little things like that. But I did notice this time, like I noticed how much of because that was definitely the Walsh house was definitely a stage, right? Like a set.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the Walsh house is the house on Elm Street is always a stage. Nobody ever filmed inside that house. I mean, we did film inside of it for 1 second, where my mom and dad are in the doorstep when I come home with the police. That when we step in, that actually is in that house. But by the time I actually step in the door, it was 2 months later, and we were on a soundstage. And the interior of the house is all completely at Desilu Studios, is where all of that was shot.
Yeah. And I really noticed this time how it was. I mean, obviously now being a filmmaker, I could see that where, like, especially the bird scene, there's no way you get that shot looking down at you guys in a real house. But I just started to notice, like, oh, I do see an artificialness to the set. And maybe that is because they didn't have the budget for it. And then again, it was a rush. Like you talked about, did you say you started filming in June and it was out by November?
It was out on Halloween.
By October.
Yeah, we were filming. I remember we were filming on July 4th because we had to stop. I think we were filming the pool party on around the 4th of July. And yeah, it was like they were editing as they went. And they were actually writing the film as they went also.
That's a breakneck fucking speed.
Oh, it's unbelievable speed. And it was, and it was printed. It was in every theater on Halloween, available in New York City, every screen. I mean, there was probably on 100 screens in Times Square. I mean, every movie theater was Nightmare on Elm Street. And it was that way all over the country. So, and you have to remember, I mean, I think we made $30 million that weekend. And I think the tickets were like $2.50 or something like that. It was probably what a movie ticket cost, or $2 then.
Man,
so
I miss
that's
those
a lot
days.
of asses and chairs. I mean, in today's money, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 would have been a huge, front page opening. I mean, it was then too. I mean, it was lauded very much for the amount of money. I mean, Bob Shea got rich overnight. I mean, he was broke. He was broke on the 30th of October, and he was rich on the 31st. So, and he didn't look back, which God bless him. He used the money well. He did. I have to say, he used the money very well, because he planted a lot of good art in the world off the back of those Freddy movies. He took that movie money and turned it into some really cool stuff.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you about, I read, like, Jack Schroeder had talked about, Clue had talked about how there was no rehearsal, that Jack never said anything to him. There was no discussion about what the intentions or direction of this film. Did you have any conversations with Jack, like, before or even during, or was it just, this is our script, we're shooting it? Because it kind of felt like that's what he was doing, was he was just, all right, this is my job, I've got to film this, I'm not interested in talking from my heart or anything like that. We're just here to get this done. And there was not a lot of collaboration with you all, or was it different? Were you able to work with each other or work with Jack?
Well, in pre-production, which we had an unusual pre-production, like we were supposed to have a week worth of rehearsals, like the cast rehearsals, which we did, but we were pretty much on our own. Just, me and Robert Russler and Kim, not Robert Englund, because of course he wasn't cast when we were doing the rehearsal. He was still negotiating some contract thing. And I do remember once where we had a meeting, and it was a quote unquote rehearsal. And literally, Kim and I were talking about this, because it would literally, that rehearsal would have gotten them arrested today, because they wanted to see basically the sex scene in the cabana. They wanted us to rehearse that. But there were like 10, 11 guys, maybe one girl. I'm not sure if there was, Rachel might have been there, or I'm not sure, or Mattia. Mattia was our first, and she was great. I don't think Mattia would have been there because I don't think she would have let it go down the way that it did. But anyway, so we were supposed to make out and all this kind of stuff to see if it was realistic. And so we were on the floor, and then there was a circle of guys sitting in chairs around us taking notes. Oh, and, you know, Kim was 17 years old, and I was a little older than that, but we didn't know that that was like not cool. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You know, if you saw that now, I mean, it would be a lawsuit. And Kim and I have talked about it. And she said, well, I just thought that's the way things were. I mean, it was her first movie. And, you know, you kind of just did what people told you to do. And I don't think, honest to God, I don't think their intentions were bad. Because I know all of those guys, you know what I mean? I know Robert Shea is a really good person, right? And as is Jack, and all of those, the men that worked on that were like, they were not lecherous creeps. Yeah. They were stupid.
Just inexperienced.
You know, to answer your question, no. You know, Jack would say, I would hear him say to the, you know, like, the movie was shot by Jacques Cankin, and who also shot like Cherry 2000.
Yeah.
And Jacques and his wife, she was first AD. Or she pulled focus, basically, really, is what she did. And they were amazing. I mean, I think his cinematography is beautiful.
Yeah.
And literally, Jack would turn to him and just go, you know, basically say, set up the shot, you know. And but when he would say to them, and I'm really not denigrating because I really talked to him about this also. It's like he'd say, "Oh, I'm an actor's director." That's what he would say to them. And then with us, he'd be like, I'm so overwhelmed by the gags or the technical aspect of filming this that he says that he had a panic attack, but the panic attack ended when he started shooting. And I don't think that's true. I don't think the panic attack ended until he was about halfway through the movie. And I think probably for the first half of the movie, he was kind of, and you know, and again, I'm not saying this like in a derogatory way. I think, I mean, it's understandable. I mean, I think he was just frozen, and he never talked to me about character, not once, and he never gave me a direction about anything. And we talk about this in Scream Queen. You know, it's like things that got passed by. You know, it's like there's a great story about Anthony Perkins doing Psycho, right? And he didn't want to scream in Psycho and the real reason that he didn't want to scream was because he was doing a Broadway musical and he didn't want to ruin his singing voice because that was really important to him. So he told Hitchcock that he was going to scream, and then Hitchcock inserted the scream later. And the tale is that he listened to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different screams from different people, right? Before he chose the one that would go in Psycho.
I think somebody's getting feedback. That's what I was really wondering, because I mean, you were coming from Broadway and just working with Altman, who I imagine is a completely different experience working with actors.
I had worked with Robert Altman, Francois Truffaut, Geraldine Page. I mean, I like to work with stellar, you know, some of the most, Wexler, the cinematographer, some of the most important people in the world. And I had been on a track where it's like, I screen tested for, like, never underestimate what a screen test means. I screen tested with De Laurentiis, Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola. You know, I was in the final cast that was cut from The Outsiders. But you got to work with those people.
Wow.
Right? And like I sit down with Woody Allen. Do you know what I mean? That was what my life was like. And I really thought, you know, like I did a movie with like Dina Merrill, which I really love, called Anna to the Infinite Power. And it's a sort of, it's really meant for children, but it's a beautiful movie. And that's what I was used to. It's like I was working for like Blue Marble Company, which was like gorgeous stuff and like very actor driven, you know, like all the cast was Broadway people. And I thought naively that everybody was like that. And the job of a director, in my opinion, and from my experience, is to protect an actor. Is like what he does is he makes the place safe for you to do anything that you want to do. And then he will carve that and shave it, and he'll take care of your performance in the editing room. You can give him the performance. I gave them a performance, and I gave them many things to choose from because I know what to do. But the job of the director, like that Scream, you know what I mean? It's like now it's like, it's okay, it's great. It turned into a whole thing that was, turned out to be really wonderful for me. But literally that Scream should have never been in the movie. If you watch the movie in Spanish or you watch the movie in Russian, it's not the same because I don't scream that way. It's a different scream. So if you go and go listen to the Spanish version of it, the Mexican one especially, the scream is low and guttural, like a boy would scream, as opposed to what a real, really you would scream like I screamed if somebody was sticking a knife in your eye. You would squeal. I mean, that's what happens to humans. Yeah. But for movie land, look at the Italian one. It's the same. It's like, the screaming, they don't call me the Scream Queen there because they don't get the connotation. They call me Scream King, and none of the girlishness applies in those other countries. And it really is centered around that scream. So, that was kind of Jack's job. Now, if that was a choice that he made, you know what I mean? Then that's his choice and he stands by it. He's the director and he gets to do that. I don't really think that he knew what he was turning loose. And then by the time it did, because he was editing the film also, which is not, I don't always think it's good to have the director as an editor or as the lead editor. I mean, edit, yes, but have somebody that's got a different perspective. Like Jack
a second set of eyes. Yeah.
Well, it's an unbiased, because the director, you fall in love with you're less willing to make cuts that are important to the film instead of important to you, is what you're saying. Like that's what an editor does. An editor comes in and trims the fat that the artist who made it is not willing to trim.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes.
Yeah.
Or actually add things in that you don't think you need. Do you know what I mean? That's one of the things. Like Scream Queen was cut 70 times, full cuts. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like 2 years worth of cutting different movies, right? But like there was a big hole in Nightmare on Elm Street too. If I'm talking too much, let me know.
No.
There was a big hole in Nightmare on Elm Street too, and Jack talks about it. The kill didn't come. You were halfway through the movie before the first person gets killed in the original way they played it and in the script. They moved up the coach's death really early in the film because they didn't have any bloodshed, and like they were missing a kill in there, and the kill that they were missing was the first blonde to die. There should have been a kill in the first 5 minutes. Actually, the scene on the bus, they should have killed the girls. You know what I mean? And satiated that, okay, he's here. You know what I mean? But that was a dream, and people didn't really understand it was a dream. And and so he had to move the coach killing out of sequence to move it up closer to satisfy those people, because you get bored, because you do come to the horror movie for, you want to see the horror, So he did that, and he edited that forward and used like a lot of extra footage of just Kim and I driving in the car, to voice over that, so that he could like tell the story through our vocals, as opposed to showing the story, which is, that's rule number one, show, don't tell,
Yeah.
So, but you do what you have to do also, what I mean? It's like, if you have a gap, you have to do it. And, Jack did a good job with that, I mean, it's like, we're still talking about it after all this time. So you must have done something right.
I assume it's just because they were cutting corners everywhere they could. And because, I mean, that's what it sounds like. Jack and David got the jobs because they were already in-house at New Line as like Jack was the trailer editor for New Line, and I think David was like the film inspector for New Line.
I thought he was
years.
the trailer guy, and
well, actually, Jack was a very good personal friend.
Yeah.
of Bob.
Of Bob.
Of Bob Shea.
Yeah.
And which is how he got the job, because it's like Wes disappeared, and then and the same way with David. I mean, I honestly think, maybe it's humor somewhere, I really don't believe that any of them had actually read the script when they started shooting. I don't think Bob Shea had read it. I don't think Jack Shoulder had read the completed script.
He didn't even like the first movie.
Yeah, I think it was like, I mean, it's like, there's a thing that bad actors do. Well, sometimes you can be a good actor and do this too, but they only read their own lines. Like you go through the script and you find your own lines.
Yeah.
And you just do those, and especially if you're working a lot, you have to do that sometimes. And I think that's what they did. I think they went looking for their own lines. It's like, what's the most important part to me? And then, because, it's like crying over spilt milk, you know what I mean? But there were so many missed opportunities in this film. And the conversation always comes up again. It's like, would if they rebooted it or they redirected it or whatever, would you be interested in being in it, seeing it, doing it, whatever? I could write a script for Nightmare on Elm Street 2 now that would be so tortured and so beautiful and scary. I mean, because like actors, you guys have gotten to spend a lot of time with this. I've spent 35 years with Jesse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's like, actors are this way about parts, but he has traveled through my entire life with me. And I know everything that he would do. Like there's a fabulous movie called Closet Monster, which is a Canadian film. And the director, I'm losing his name right now, but he is a big fan of Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And Closet Monster is not a horror film, but it's a horror film. And Connor Jessup is the star of it. And go and watch it, and you notice the similarities between Jesse and Connor's character. Like there's something in his stomach trying to get out of him in this movie. And what it is in the movie is really frightening. But I think like all the opportunities, like, Jesse should have had, I think he should have been like, well, first of all, just let me say that if I was doing it over again, I would have totally done Jesse differently. And then probably it would have been a big mistake and we wouldn't be having this conversation. But I would have made it like gothy, kind of depressed, Smithy kind of boy if I knew what was going on. I had really long hair when I started shooting the movie and they cut it all off. I would have kept the long hair. And I would have been sort of like James Duvall, and totally fucked up. And I would have had like Smith posters, and I would have made Jesse a depressive. And also I would have given him lots of stomach problems. Like, like that he was always having problems with his stomach, like that his stomach hurt and all that kind of stuff. Because then, when he gives birth to Freddy, it becomes a totally different thing. And I would have also had him be a cutter, like that, like all these weird cuts start showing up on his body. Like when I wrote Jesse's Lost Journals, there's a part of Jesse's Lost Journals where Jesse starts getting tattoos, but they're to cover up where Freddy scratches names on his body. And I, in my own body, I have the name of every character I ever played tattooed on my body someplace. So I have like 35 names tattooed on my body. And, I played with that and thought, oh, wouldn't it be really interesting if, like, Jesse was harming himself to stay awake, cutting himself, which is, something that's pretty common with gay people. So, I'd love to have all of those things to play with. And if people would have said something to me about it, I was naive in my own way too. I mean, I had just played a trans person. I had no fear of, You know, I didn't fear playing a gay person, or I didn't fear, playing any type of character. But if they would have just forewarned me, then it could have been my choice, and I wouldn't have played it in the way that thought I was expected to play it, which was really an audition piece for the next lead film that I was supposed to get. You know, that I could be sort of, I don't want to say bland, but that I could be like, the movie star guy is never the most interesting person on the screen. He's not the most twitchy one. He's like, that's the character actor. So
true.
I would have,
very true.
You know what I mean? So it's like, you're really like, what makes and I'm going to use this word, and it's not a derogatory word one more time. It's like flat. Like Heather is flat, and Nancy is flat in Elm Street, and you can project a lot of stuff on to her. It's the same way with Jamie Lee Curtis. Like Jamie Lee Curtis, like people, it's interesting to watch people's reaction to Jamie Lee now that she's become more public about her political things, and she's back sort of in the horror world again. And how people just don't like her. And the reason they don't like her is because they had projected all this stuff on her, that because she was flat, she was a good projection, and that's what movie stars kind of do, like you project your hopes and dreams on them. That's why Nancy is such a good character. Do you know what I mean? Because you can almost project anything onto her that you want to,
Makes sense.
Well, what's something you brought up about how you would have written Jesse, or how you would now there's something I thought about earlier about David watching Scream Queen, and him talking about, like, because he was very defensive about, that was Jack, or that was you, or that was that kind of thing. And he made the choice. I thought it would be interesting to write the subtext about a gay young man and at that time. But it was one of these things where he only had, like, I don't know, a month to write the script, and he probably didn't talk to any gay people when he wrote it. He wasn't gay himself, but he chose to write a film about a gay character, right? Maybe not even really understanding.
But did he really do
what
that
that
though?
experience
That's,
was? Well,
sorry to cut you off, Nate, but
it sounds like that's what he did. I think
he says that, but did he really do that?
It sounds like he did in Scream, that he thought it would be interesting. I think it was on Never Sleep Again, on the extra stuff that didn't make it into the film, the interviews with him. He talked about, like, he thought it would be interesting to put that, because he didn't want to just make another slasher film. So he purposely decided to write that about a gay character. Thought it would be interesting, but he wasn't responsible about it because he didn't understand the character he's writing about.
It sounds like he's backpedaling.
Well, if you had somebody who was homosexual writing, or at least talk to homosexual people before you write a character like that, then you would have maybe handled it better, or would have been like, bring those real life experience of the character.
Let me hand you a dissertation on this really quickly.
Okay.
First of all, I would just ask the question. First of all, anything that David says in Never Sleep Again, you have to take with a grain of salt, and this you could put for Daniel and Tommy, right? Mm-hmm. Is they filmed David, and David lied to them, and then the last person they were shooting was me, and I called David a liar. So they called David, and he had to come back in, right, and reshoot. But they used film from both settings for him. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So they used
kind of mixed both interviews.
Yeah, they just mixed them together, which makes him sound insane.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the stuff like that you're talking about, like that's after he's been outed, right? Where he's like, well, I just did this because I thought it would be this and this and this and this and this. And the question that I would ask David, and I did ask David, and I don't know if it made it into Scream Queen or not, because I sort of still black out when I see it, is why? I mean, here's your big break in Hollywood. You're going to write a film script. Then you take it to the most toxic place that you can possibly take it at that time, with AIDS. I mean, go see the movie Cruising and tell me what you think about that. You know what I mean? Because that's what straight people thought about gay people. And Jack is the same way. Like Jack was like, oh, I lived in the village, and we've talked about this privately. Like I lived in the village, and I would see the sex stores with 20-foot dildos in the windows and stuff like that, and it's like all these guys who are like clones walking the street, and the aspect of gay people is so skewed and so like kind of hideous that and when David talks about like not knowing any gay people, and the line producer was gay. Half the people half the people who work at New Line Cinema are gay. He can't like say that he didn't know any gay people. That's just a lie, And any of those guys, like Joel, these are all friends of mine, so I love them, so I can bust them on their stuff. When they're all like, it's like straight guy cooties, it's like, well, I didn't see it, like get it, I got to get it away from me. These are all sophisticated guys who work in the film industry in Hollywood, California. Now, it may be a low budget movie, but a low budget movie in Hollywood is at the top of the food chain as far as world cinema goes, right? These people are surrounded by homosexuals in a time where homosexuals were coming out and homosexuality was very present. They did not know about homosexuality. So that just like, it's a weird thing. It's like, they just don't, like if they know about it, then it says something about them. Do you know what I mean? That's wrong, And that's the thing with David, he protests too much because I don't know David, right? I know that David had a tragic life. He lost his wife. She died. He married again. David and I are the same age. There's really? 2 years difference in me and David, his convoluted storytelling and blame, shame, and other is probably, not saying that he isn't homosexual, because I'm not saying that, is the textbook saddest case of closet homosexuality I've ever seen, even if he's not a closet homosexual. Like when he starts to talk about, he's talking about in Scream Queen, he'll start talking about, well, why would anybody want to be a homosexual? And it gets very personal where he's like, and then people think you have AIDS and they'll think this and your family won't want to talk to you. And he begins to personalize it, and I don't think that he is a homosexual, but I think that probably that fear was very present for him at some point in his life. And he projected all of that onto something else, which could be really cool, actually.
Yeah, I mean, fear.
If you just clue everybody in and say, oh yeah, okay, now it's 2020. Yeah, I did that. And don't you think it's a great idea? That's not what happened, that would be very petty of me if that's what happened. I mean, the build up to my meeting with David was 2 decades in the coming. It wasn't like 4 weeks in a film.
Not overnight.
He followed me everywhere. Anytime that somebody would find me and interview me, David had always been there first. And he said some horrible things about me. And he treated me really horribly. And he's really a lucky guy that I was seeking peace, not vengeance.
Right.
Because I could have whooped his ass hard. I've got the film to do it. And so could Roman and Tyler. And we chose absolutely not to do it.
Do you truly believe that he avoided the reunion convention because of you guys'?
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
You think? Yeah.
Oh yeah. God, he couldn't. It was like right then I had just done something at San Diego Comic-Con, and BuzzFeed did a huge, like year-long thing on Elm Street, which now comes up. And David was afraid of me, and because it became clear over the course of time. It's funny. I knew when Bob Shea followed me on Twitter that I was onto something, right? And that, Roman and Tyler and I and I will say me, you know what I mean? Because I will say me, and I'll take credit for it. I saved Nightmare on Elm Street 2, you know, and very intentionally did what I was doing. This was all intentional. None of it was by accident. And I mean, the reception is a wonderful accident. But I went back to clear my own name. Do you mean? And I had nothing really to gain from it, except for, I mean, I didn't want to be in show business. The only thing I had to do was clear my own sense of, why did I let them do this to me? Do you know what I mean? Because if I would have had social media like I do now, you know, I could have fucking ruled the world. I could have torn that movie apart, put it back together again, and came out of it, you know, like starring in another movie in 5 minutes if I had Facebook and Instagram and people could hear me articulate what was going on. But they just buried me. You know, I mean, I had a contract that was very specific. And it's like, it's one of those things where they don't want me to sue them, right? Because I have a contract, still have the contract, sitting right over in the corner, that says that you cannot mention Nightmare on Elm Street 2 without mentioning my name. I'm the star of Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Robert Englund is not the star. The first person that has to be mentioned is Mark. That's in the contract. And then with Robert Englund, right? And that changes after Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Then it stars Robert Englund with the kids, right? Also, none of the merchandise cannot have my name on it. And it's like, and if I'm in the merchandise, I get 8% of everything that's sold in Elm Street. So every Freddy doll, all of them, you know, you notice when they rebooted Freddy for Nightmare on NECA for 2, they made those little dogs and put them on the bus, but they didn't put me on the bus, you know, or they didn't put my picture on the thing, because if they did, they have to pay me, you know, and they've never paid me.
Is that why we don't have a Jesse figure?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
I want that.
Yeah,
I mean, you do have a Jesse figure that from Needful Things made a really cute one, but you'll never have Jesse things because I have to be paid for this.
Yeah, you're not on the back. It's just the dogs.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, it's like, I love that they had enough room to make the dogs that nobody liked, that barely made the film because they were so drugged up, but they couldn't put me or Kim.
They should have made a Jesse figure mid.
And if you know if you know the different, if you know what's underneath all of that, like Nancy does, I mean, Heather doesn't have that same contract. You know, I mean, they made this contract with me thinking, oh my God, we're going to make this, you know, little film. They didn't make it thinking 35 years from now, we'll still be talking about it and it'll still be selling merchandise. Now, imagine how much money I would make if they actually paid all that.
It'd be
insane. Do you know what I mean?
Jesus.
It would be an insane amount of money. Absolutely. I mean, I would have been bought out 20 years ago. They would have said, "Oh, here's $1 million. Go away." You know what I mean? But they didn't do that because I quit show business, right? So I was just gone. So they didn't know where I was at. It's funny when they talk about like not finding Mark, right? When they did Freddy versus Jason, if you all notice, I'm in the opening credits of Freddy versus Jason. Just there's like 3 seconds of little Jesse transformation. And that was cut and ready to go into the theater, right? And the lawyer said, you can't use this trailer. You don't have his permission to do this. You know, that's what lawyers do.
Right.
And they found me in 24 hours because I lived across the street from New Line Cinema. And I made $35,000 in 3 seconds from Freddy versus Jason.
Jesus.
Right?
Wow.
And that's all because the lawyer said you're going to have to recut the trailer because they had to pay me on my own deal, right? So that tells you how much they were really looking for me, you know. Nobody was really looking for me except for the fans, you know, and the fans couldn't get to me because New Line Cinema. Now, the same thing goes with the opening of Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, all the press was supposed to be mine, but then the press agent said, you know what, Freddy's going to be the star of this film, and all of my press opportunities were taken away from me and they were given to Robert. So, you know, Robert led the Gay Pride Parade. Robert did all this kind of stuff. And that was all my publicity, you know, because it was written into my contract. So I didn't have the opportunity even once to have somebody interview me and say, did you intend this to be this way? I went to one Fangoria thing, and then I never heard from them again. Literally never.
You were just silenced.
I was just thrown away, basically. And, you know, over the years, and like I said, you know, I'm going to say this again, so that I really like Bob Shay. I really do. And I love what he did. But I think, you know, especially in the first 3 Elm Streets, you know, there was some payment due to me, to Kim, to Robert Russler, to Tuesday. You know, they owed us another film.
Touch me, baby.
And not an Elm Street film
Drive
either.
me crazy.
Jared.
Jared, are you drunk again?
No.
Hello? What?
I was just
Jared
singing
started
that
singing out of
song.
nowhere.
Touch me, baby.
Would you ever
Oh,
come
Do you
back?
want to
if they-
talk about that part of it?
Would you ever come back if they asked you for another Nightmare?
Probably not at this point. No, I mean, no. But I mean, they're not going to do that. I mean, if they do a reboot of Nightmare, it would be a completely different thing.
Well, yeah,
And
but
there
not maybe not as Jesse, but maybe as like a. I don't know.
Oh, everybody says, oh, he can play the gay dad or the gay teacher. And it's like, you know, not really interested. If they ask me to direct it, I direct it.
Oh.
Or if they ask me to show run it and sit in on a writing thing I'd love to do that. And then I would do a cameo, but just to show up for a cameo, no, I wouldn't. Because I just think it would be disruptive. And I can see, you know, Robert has started talking about, you know, that if they reboot the series, they should reboot Elm Street 2, and they should do it as a full-on gay movie. So that then Freddy can mess with, you know, because the real closet case is Brady, right? And then, and also Freddy. You know, I mean, that's the one thing that nobody ever, you know, wanted to talk about in the beginning of this, you know, many years ago, is that, you know, Jesse's not pursuing Freddy. You know, Freddy's after Jesse.
Yeah, he's the pedophile that's trying to get
Right.
to Jesse.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, like, Jesse's just trying to live a normal life. But the one that is sexualizing him and playing with him and torturing him that way is the, you know, and then people say also the thing about like child molesters. It's like, you know, why did they turn, you know, in the beginning, Freddy was a pedophile, and then they changed that. It's like, those kids are all teenagers.
I've
You
been
know what I
saying
mean?
that for years. I was like, Tina is 15 years old in the first
Right.
movie. Like, he's a pedophile.
That's child molestation, I
Yeah.
guess, if you don't. If you like, there's a guy, I have like a really funny story about a guy who, like, he's my favorite person. It's like, whenever, I can't remember, Nathan, do you know who did somebody made a Rainbow Freddy, and it, like, you know, I know Rube Borg used it, but when the Rainbow Freddy first showed up, there was this guy, and he just like ripped a new one on me. I put up the Rainbow Freddy, and, you know, the sweater. And I didn't say anything. I just stuck it up, and he was like, and it was this diatribe of like, you fags have to have everything. Why do you have to? You know, it's like Freddy's not gay, and fuck you, and like all this kind of stuff, right? And it's like, you guys, you all have to just take everything. Everything has to be for you. Marsha. So I'm like, dude, I wrote him back, and I was like, you know that he's a serial killer child molester, right? Like, we don't want him. You can have him. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, but like he could handle him being a child molester serial killer, but he didn't want him to be gay.
It's ridiculous.
You know, and that tells you a whole lot about our society right there.
Yeah, like when the remake came out, you know, they really focused on the pedophilia side of him, and people were really upset. And I'm like, but he always was. And why are you okay with him being a child murderer, chopping up 5-year-olds? But like,
Exactly.
I don't understand. And that's what I liked about Wes, is Wes really got upset because they made him a hero, and they put him on pajamas and he did all that, where he always intended Freddy to be that vile, ugly person. And your film is the last time Freddy was that character.
Yeah.
Part
Right,
two
and
is
I
the
think
last
that's
time Freddy was.
I think that's an honor to Wes. You know, I had the opportunity to talk to Wes before he passed away, and you know, I had a very big resentment against Wes, and I now when I say that I have very big resentment against Wes, let me reframe that for you. I have an intellectual curiosity about things that involve me, right? I don't like, trust me, I didn't lose any sleep over Wes Craven. You know, I like what Wes has created. I didn't like lose any sleep about going like, oh boy, he didn't like Jesse. I know that had nothing to do with it, you know what I mean? But I do know that like intellectually as an adult, as a person who's asked to speak about these things an awful lot, because I've gotten to talk about all this stuff an awful lot, is, you know, it was very disrespectful what, you know, what Wes did, you know, because like when he didn't want this to be a franchise, he wanted it to be like a one-off movie. He walked away from it, and like Bob Shea was broke and he needed that money, and he got it, you know what I mean? And Robert Englund, you know, he honored Wes's vision. I think we all did in the darkness of what Freddy was. And you know, instead of saying, you know what, I walked away and this was what was left to me, now I'm going to have to rehash some things, but I'm going to make this work, right? Wes just said it never happens. You know what I mean? Like he took our $35 million and rebooted Elm Street and became a multimillionaire, all the while like forgetting the child that made the $35 million.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I say Robert Shea, you know, I'm a big thing for loyalty, right? Like he owed Kim another movie in a New Line movie somewhere.
Mhm.
And he owed Heather something out of the Elm Street franchise to give her an opportunity for another, because we all came in there and worked for nothing. You know what I mean? And we showed up at every press event, and we, you know, still to this day, we're still showing up. We're, you know, the kids of Elm Street and Robert Englund, we drive the franchise. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Still. And they're
Yeah.
making a lot of money. And trust me, they're not kicking it back to us. But they love it. Like, you know, Warner Brothers should get down and kiss my feet, you know, for this year, because you're going to be a lot of renting Nightmare on Elm Street too. Like, look what happened with Shudder, the Scream Queen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had 500,000 views in the first day of the trailer.
Was Wes on set very much for that movie?
Oh no, Wes left. Wes was never on set.
Never at all.
Oh no.
No, he had nothing
Wes
to do
had
with that.
nothing to do
There's
with
no part of it.
He was mad at, he walked away. That's why Jack Shoulder directed it. And I think they did talk to Wes, because, you know, the logical thing in Scream Queen, I mean, in Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is read my Jesse's Lost Journals if you haven't read it. Nathan, you've read it, haven't you?
I've been meaning to get it from you. I mentioned to you a while back, and you said I wasn't old enough.
Oh, that's right. Well, you've read it. Well,
Yeah, I'm gonna get them.
Okay, well, yeah, like I got to get a big stack of them and start handing them out to people, because actually they're really fun.
Yeah.
What Jesse's Lost Journals is the first half of the journal stays with the script of Nightmare on Elm Street. It's like if Nancy had a diary, which she didn't, of course, then Jesse had a journal. So it's me writing about the subtext of Jesse as it's being played in the movie, true to the script. And then halfway through is the end of the movie, and I end the movie differently, right? And then it's what happens to Jesse. And Jesse's life mirrors my own. Like, he leaves Springwood, he goes to New York, and after being institutionalized, but he's a street artist in New York, but Freddy has come with him, and like Freddy uses him sort of as porn, you know. It's like he has to make his peace with Freddy being with him all the time, and he kills a lot of people. But the real ending of Nightmare on Elm Street 2 really should have been that when Lisa goes to hug Jesse, then the glove should have come out and killed her.
Every time when I watched that movie a lot as a kid, every time I get to the end of the movie, I always anticipated Jesse to kill her. Like
Yeah, he
every time
should've.
I watch it, because he's just like he has no emotion on his face. I mean, you're just
Right.
you blank stare, and every time I watch it, I'm waiting for him to just gutter.
Right. That should have been the jump cut right there and the end of the movie. You know what I mean? Like there should not have been any of that stuff on the bus. It just should have been, and the bus could be some credit thing or something. I don't know what that, but literally, because in David's story and in the story of Elm Street, he should kill her. You know, I mean, because he wanted to kill the woman. Like anybody, if you notice in Nightmare on Elm Street 2, anybody that's attracted to Jesse in Nightmare on Elm Street 2 gets killed because they're all attracted to him. You know, the coach,
Yeah, I didn't think about
Grady,
that. Grady.
any man that has, and you notice they're all men that get killed. There are no girl kills, and so literally the woman that is trying to save him should have been the last to die. But Wes, I think, they had talked to Wes and said you have to keep the girl alive as the hero because that's the way he saw. But if Jesse would have killed her in the end, or Freddy would have killed her in the end, then you would have been in some really dark territory, and then you could have really had fun in 3. You know, because I always thought that the interlocutor, that I would have done it this way. If I was handed this hash and I had to work with it, then I would say that like Nancy was the interlocutor to the dream world and Jesse was the bridge to the real world. And the two of them would have to come together to trap Freddy somewhere in the middle. So they would have to work together to get him out of the dream world, but not in the real world, and then freeze him there, you know? And they could have been a good team, you know, because she was very analytical and smart, and, you know, Jesse was intuitive, you know? It's like, you know, Nancy's kind of butch, you know, really. And she is. I mean, so is Lori. You know, all those final girls are generally a little tiny bit butch. You know, and then they could work together and they could have killed Freddy, and that would have been fun. But that wasn't the way that it went. So anyway, read
a cool movie too.
Pitch my own book. You know, read Jesse's Lust Journal. It's really good.
Didn't you in your book suggest that Jesse was in a relationship or at least attracted to the guy that tries to calm Freddy down at the pool party?
Yes, yeah, because actually I knew him in real life, and you know, he was in like, he's a very funny guy, and he came on I have the best.
Wait, is that the help yourself fucker guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He was like on his way to being a big movie star. He was like, I think he was in China Beach, the television show. You remember that? You probably don't. You're too young. But China Beach was a great big show, and he was also in Footloose. He was in Footloose, and like all of my friends were in Footloose. Like Sarah Jessica Parker was living with me at the time she was shooting Footloose, so I knew all those Footloose people. And he came on, and he came in, you know, to do his day shoot. And he walked in. This is very much like a movie star kind of guy, right? And so I was like sitting over the corner, and he sat down in the makeup chair, which was my makeup chair. And he was like, "Hey, how you doing? Oh, are you with us on this? And you know, are you with me like on this, you know, this gig?" And my makeup artist Danny, who was really fabulous, was like, "He's the fucking star of the show. Get your ass out of his chair." You know? Go, Danny, because this guy was kind of a little condescending to me always, but he was a nice guy. He was just young, and so yeah, so I made that only. I only made it him because everybody obviously thought it was Robert, and I wanted to keep them away from Robert on a certain like the fans away from Rob. I wanted to give him the room to like not be you know, people bugging him all the time, because you know, like a lot of people say things to Robert all the time that I don't think they understand, you know, actually what they're saying to him. But he's so cool, you know. It's like he says in a lot of the interviews that we'll do, like when we're in Fan Fest, he was like, "I'm so glad that ultimately in the end, you know, that I don't have anything to apologize for," you know, because he doesn't. You know, it's like every gay guy that walked up to him and said, "You know, I loved you and I really wanted to fuck you," and all this kind of stuff. he's right there for them, takes a picture with them, smiles, hugs them, signs, "I'll be your boyfriend." Never, nothing, like a lot of those guys, that's not what you'll get at the convention. Right. If you say, it's like, "Here's your picture, get away from me." And so, but Robert, we talked about it, like when we talked about the film of the movie, Robert always says, "Oh, I always thought that Grady was his boyfriend." I mean, that for me was the one, that's what it was. Mm-hmm. That, and he'll say that to me too, like when we're taking pictures and people say, "Oh, you guys look like boyfriends." And then he'll say, "Well, we were always boyfriends." And I think that's really kind of sweet. So,
Is that
so
why
I
you fought so much?
I mourn him very well in Jesse's Luster. He gets a big send off, I'm really mad at Freddy for that. But
I'd really like to talk about that scene of Grady's, because it's one of my favorite scenes in Nightmare on Elm Street, period, is the transformation and the killing of Grady. I know everybody here, I think, is a big fan of that sequence. That scene alone makes
one of the best scenes
that
in the
movie.
series.
And I know Mark Shostrom was the guy that kind of was in charge of that sequence, right? I mean, you had to get a whole full body cast and everything, or do it. Is there anything you could talk about working with Mark and making that scene?
How long did it take? Just to get makeup on and stuff.
Well, the thing is, it's like, first of all, I love Mark, and it's like, and Mark's got, in history, got outshone by
Yeager.
Kevin Yeager. You know what I mean? And Kevin is he's a FX genius, really. Do you know what I mean? And Mark was at the end of an old school thing. Like that transformation scene was great. And it still kind of holds up, after all this time. And the thing is, it was puppets. It was all puppets. It was like full body cast of me. It took a long time to do it. Like every hair was placed, my arms and my teeth, and it was all real, It's kind of creepy. And that scene took 3 days to shoot. And it was shot in a master shot over and over and over again. And the man that was the dolly guy had shot, he's an old pro, like Warner Brothers pro. And he announced to the cast, the crew, after we finished that sequence, he said, I've never, addressing me, which was really sweet. He said, "If you were in any other movie, you would win an Academy Award for what you just did." He said, the last movie I shot where I saw this was, I shot Ordinary People. And I wish you could have played the part that Tim played in. That's a huge compliment from an old union guy, right? And Clue did the same thing to me. Like recently we were in Texas together, or Nebraska or something. And Clue's like, do you all know Clue?
I met him last year finally, and I love that guy so much.
I wish I could meet him.
He's in the Netherlands of like life and being an angel. Because he's in his 90s, and he's out there. Do you know what I mean? He's very lucid, but he's very, he's a very spiritual person. I mean, he always has been a very spiritual person, but I mean, he's way out there. So we were at a Alamo Draft House someplace, and we were going to speak about Nightmare on Elm Street 2 after it was over with. And then they were going to show Scream Queen. And so Clue, being Clue, he just stayed and watched it, And after it was over with, I sat on a panel with him. And, I have it on tape, and I'm not even going to repeat what he said about me, because it just sounds self-aggrandizing when you say it yourself. But, suffice to say that in the end of his comments, he said, that the world was deprived of your talent, and it's a real shame. And he said, because I watched the movie, And there's not 1 second of Nightmare on Elm Street true that Mark is not completely present in what he's doing. And he was like, you don't know how hard that is to do. And that was, for me, and then he said I was like Cocteau because of my drawing and being an artist. You know, but he said it all magically like I was an angel or something. But I love that, and I'm going to save that film for myself, and I'm not going to show it to anybody else because it's, you know, just it's very specifically for me that he was saying that stuff. But I did have, I believe, you know, I mean, we made a documentary about it. I certainly can talk about myself. I do believe that I had a natural gift to act and a natural understanding of what acting was. And I certainly wish, in retrospect, that I could have moved from that scene, that transformation scene, into another script that fit me, that where my talents could have shined. And I wish I would have had the ability to nurture them over the course of like 10 years in film, to see what I could have done. Because I think I have the raw material, you know, to start. And that was just a start, right? But I had the personality and I have the talent and I have the looks, you know what I mean? That if there would have been something there to guide me, I would have loved to see what those 10 years would have produced. But I won't get that opportunity now. Now I'm like, I started to make movies a little bit, and I'm getting to play with that now, just, you know, for me personally. I don't envision a big film career for Mark coming anytime soon, but I do, like, I made this movie called One Dead Dog, and I really love it. And I enjoyed playing a grown-up, you know, because I thought the only thing worth playing was the juvenile lead, you know, the star. And I didn't realize there was a lot of fun to be had playing all different kinds of things. And I could be a good character man now, I think. But I don't know if that's in the cards for me, you know. So we'll just see where life is going to take us, because it's taken me in some really, you know, phenomenal directions. But yeah, I love Mark Shostrom, and I love Robert in that scene, both Roberts, and again, you know, Jacques Henkin, you know, that's you know, I'll tell you a little thing for the gay boys in the crowd. The thing that I was most concerned about in that, this is how fucked up I was, right? By the time that we got to this part, is I was terrified that I threw the glove like a girl, that I didn't throw the glove correctly. And that it was just like, because that's how paranoid I had become, you know, in the end, because this was the end of the film after things started to reveal themselves. And I was like, oh, fuck. I mean, what can I do? You know,
They didn't reshoot it. They just went with the first shot.
There was no way to, there's no way to throw a glove like a boy at a mirror to break it. You know what I mean? Well,
you were distraught at the time too, so
it was just in my head. You know, I mean, that's the thing that was really, you know, that the pinnacle of all of this thing was where I got destroyed in this particular journey of life was in my own mind. You know, it was no place else really. I mean, there was stuff going on that people said on the internet, and, you know, boys talk, and everybody gets called a faggot. If you're a movie star, if you don't have 1,000 people saying you're gay, then you're not really a movie star. And if you're a girl, I mean, I got back cleared when one day I was looking up Julia Roberts, and you know, people said what an old hag she was, and that nobody would ever have sex with her. And Diane Lane was the same thing. You know, I have sex with her if you put a bag over her head. Wow. You know, and I was like, these people are just foul, and it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to get this. So I understood that, you know, but where my confidence got torn apart was in my own psyche. And that's what I held against David all of these years, because it was in I'd let him get to me, and I had never let anybody get to me. And trust me, there were a lot of people that tried, you know, from the time growing up in the Midwest South, the way I grew up, you know, I was just a target. And I didn't let any of those bullies get me down. And I let some dumpy old man sitting in a room playing some little game get into my head. And I let him sidetrack me from my desire and my destiny, which I was walking straight towards. And I had walked in a straight line from Kansas City, Missouri, all the way to Hollywood to do what I was doing. And I got there. I got where I intended to go. It's just like now, you know, to segue into Scream Queen, it's like Jack said to me at one point, he goes, well, you don't know what the documentary is going to be. And this was 3 years ago. And I said, oh, I know exactly what it's going to be. And he goes, you can't know, it's a documentary. And I was like, no, I know exactly where we're going. And I did know exactly where we're going. I didn't know how we were going to get there. And I still don't know how Roman and Tyler got us there. But they got us right where I wanted to go, because we're having the conversation now, and we're going to segue into that conversation now with you guys. We're having the exact conversation that I wanted to have. I chose this conversation to have this conversation on a national level, and I'm having it. You know, we've had almost 1,000 reviews of Scream Queen, and 99.9% of them are positive.
Yeah.
And people identify with the movie. And this was my intention. And I don't want to like put a crown on my head, because I would have never gotten here by myself. It would have been all in my imagination. But at every step of the road where there was somebody needed to step in to add something to the mix so that we could have this conversation that we're about to have, you know, I say it's God or the universe or whatever, but they were all put right there. Just like little Nathan was put there. You know, he had his part. Our little Nathan right here had his part in this game. He had his part in this show. The part was planned for him. You know what I mean? Yeah, we just didn't know it, and he didn't know it. But it was a moment for him in his life, I think. And I think it's an important moment in his life. And I'm proud that we got to, you know, participate in that way with each other. But I would be a liar if I would said that it wasn't all intentional, you know, because it was.
Can I interject and just say something?
Sure.
I watched the documentary, and I realized how we have a kind of a common upbringing. You grew up in Kansas City, and I grew up just a few miles away in Topeka, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if you're aware of what's going on in Topeka, Kansas, but Westboro Baptist Church is stationed in Topeka, Kansas. And about 30 minutes into the documentary, I saw the protests flag of GodHatesFags.com.
Uh-huh.
And I immediately felt a pang of embarrassment, because I live and I see that hatred, not necessarily on a daily basis, but I see them protesting on streets in my town all the time. I feel like I grew up like you. My family was mostly Catholic. I should say we weren't staunchly Catholic, but mostly Catholic.
A Catholic's a Catholic. I mean.
You just
Can't get away from it.
You just add the guilt to it. But growing up with that hatred, like I see weekly, I can't say it's every day, like growing up with that hatred I have had a hard time acknowledging where I live.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a capital of hatred, honestly. Like, that's one of the things my city is known for, and it's really been a hard thing to live with. And just seeing it in the documentary, when I saw it, like, I immediately felt a pang of embarrassment. But living through that hatred, sorry, I'm getting a little teary. I know my morals, and I know that they're abominable. And Like I'm sorry to bring it down a little bit, but like I literally started crying when I saw it. But I also wanted to flip it on the flip side and ask you if punching George Clooney in the face on screen was one of the highlights of your career.
You're so cute, and you know what? And I'm not going to let you get. I'm not going to let you get away with that. So we're going to go right back to where you were, okay? And then we'll go to George later. But I'm going to tell you, like, you really touched me, and I want to tell you some things that I didn't grow up in Kansas City, Missouri. I grew up in Nashville, Missouri, which is near Joplin, Missouri, and my grandfather was
that's southern Missouri. Yeah,
that is where that Jeb and all of those Westboro, all of those people are right there in Joplin now. And it's like it's the Klan. It's Klan Central. Kansas City is nice, and in North Kansas City, it's like liberal. But you go 10 miles out. My grandfather owned his church, right? He literally owned the church lock, stock, and barrel. He owned the building, and all of the people in his congregation were women. And he had a radio show, and he spewed hate, right? And, you know, everything was what you're hearing right now. You know what I mean? And but he was my granddad. You know what I mean? And I sang in the church. You know, and then I went to my other grandma's, and we went to mass. You know, it's pretty fucked up. But I used to be embarrassed about where I was from too. But I'm not embarrassed about where I'm from any longer, because I don't, you know, honestly, and I'll tell you this truly, I do not judge people about where they are. Like if you see, like I had a friend, his name is David, and David was really important in my life. We were peers, you know, same credits, you know, all this kind of stuff, same situation. Except for the difference between him and I was my dad was a truck driver, bigot, tough guy. And his parents were psychiatrists, and he went to Yale drama school. And he's now a showrunner for, you know, big shows on ABC, and like has a great career as a writer and all this kind of stuff. Is married to his husband. They have a child, you know, they have a couple of houses and all that kind of stuff. David and I used to be like, I felt like a failure compared to him. You know what I mean? But then I realized one day, and it was a real epiphany, we didn't start in the same place. You know, we didn't start out equal, you know, like all this stuff that's going on with Black Lives Matter now. This is all super, super important stuff. And like my friend Toy is so raped by this stuff on a daily basis that like I can just like stand there for her. You know what I mean? Because I love her, and all of my Black friends are, you know, I just stand there for them because I don't have any, I don't think I have any right to talk about Black Lives Matter, to be honest with you. But the one thing that I can talk about with authority, with real authority, and with a real place of being there is the white person's reaction to Black Lives Matter. And I know what that's all about because I lived that, you know, and I know what those coded things are. People try to trap me into conversations on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's like, oh, don't you believe that? Like, honey, I hear the whistle blowing. I know where you're going. You know what I mean? Like that, you know, the latest one is that guy that showed up with a gun. Like, you don't go to a riot, a Black Lives Matter, tearing down Confederate statues with your gun without the intention of either using it or intimidating somebody with it. And so if somebody kicked your ass when you got there and hit you in the head with a skateboard, so what? Because you signed up for that. You know, you wanted to be the good old boy who showed up down there and showed your colors. Well, you flashed your gun, you shot it, and somebody almost killed you. So you just have to take your part in that. You know what I mean? And do I have sympathy for you? As an individual, yes. But as a group, no. I have no sympathy whatsoever. And because I grew up around racists and I grew up around bigots, and I know what it is. You know, my dad used to say to me, I would be like, I was very pro African American, Black, everything, because I loved like Stevie Wonder and I loved the music, and I came of age in that time, and my dad was like, "You don't know what you're talking about." And I was like, "I know exactly what I'm talking about." No, he goes, "You don't know what you're talking about because you don't know Black people. Because I put you in a world where there is no Black people. I arranged this for you so that you never have to be with any of these people. So you don't know what you're talking about because you've lived in a world that I created for you." And he was right. He did. We didn't know any Black people. The only Black person I knew was the lady that ironed our clothes and the man who shined my shoes on Saturday after I got my hair cut. And they called him Uncle Tom. And you would pay him a quarter, and he would pop a dime out of his ear for your change, and you were supposed to give that to him as a tip. And we were supposed to call him Mr. because he was a good Black person. Now, the man that tried to take my dad's job when they integrated the station, he wasn't called Mr. He was a guy that didn't know his place and was trying to usurp a white person's job. And I can tell you all about that and how that rolls, So, and it's the same thing with homosexuality. I just act, it's like I just, what's that nice gay guy they're talking about? It's, that nice gay gentleman is when you walk out of the room, you're the faggot. And, I know that for a lot of people, and I know it's very different and it's not true of everybody, but, it's changed. A lot of changes coming into our world. And, this is all just a huge, I mean, I don't know how it's going to end up, but this is just a whole big old invitation for all of us to sit down like you just did and have a good cry. Because you know what? It's really sad, what your community did to you as a child to like indoctrinate you with that kind of hate, for the tape that goes on in your brain to include things that are just insane. I mean, they're just insane, and a lot of those people, those preachers and stuff that we really, deal with. And like I said, I don't know why I got a driver's seat for this whole life and this stuff. My grandfather was a con man. That's all he was. He was there for your money, and any way he could get to your money he was going to get to your money, just like these people, these religious people on Fox television stuff. All they want is your money. They don't care about you, and they don't have a relationship with God. They're con people, and they have a good con going. And we have to denounce them. You know what I mean? And when you denounce them, you can only denounce what you know. You can talk about what you read, but what you can preach about is what you know in life. And what you saw. It's the truth. You can preach about it after you sit down and have a good cry about it. And then you can be a part of it never happening again. And that's what this whole thing is about right now, is it's a big opportunity for all of us to sit down and have a big cry. Some of us are not going to do it. You know what I mean? Some of us are going to go fighting, in the street, maybe. Who knows? No, there's no telling how this is going to turn out. But where you stand, and I know where I stand.
Yeah. And
so that's what you have to be faithful to, because you don't have nothing to be embarrassed about because your family's racist. That ain't you. That took me a long time to learn that I am not my dad and I'm not going to become him, because I rejected that. And it cost me a lot to reject it, but I rejected it because I don't believe it, And as weak as I always thought I was strong enough to stand up to all of this. And if I can stand up to it, anybody else can stand up to it too, in your own way, because everybody's way is different. Sorry, yes, I loved hitting George Killian. I loved him, and he was a total gentleman. He was a gentleman, and it's like he took me out to lunch, when we were shooting, and he took me to this nice restaurant for lunch, and all he wanted to talk about was being an actor and Robert Altman, and how brilliant all that was, and how much he loved acting. And all I wanted to talk about was I loved his aunt, Rosemary Clooney, who was sick. And I'm just a great opportunity there to, you know, he was a gentleman. He was a real gentleman. But I did sock it to him, and I got a stuntman pin for it too in that union. So that was pretty good.
I get what you're saying though, Jared. Like when you watched, I cried watching the documentary as well, but it was for different reasons in particular. But I get what you're saying about being embarrassed, like where you're from, because I mean I'm from West Virginia. It's for different reasons, because most of the West Virginia stereotypes are uneducated or hillbillies and all that shenanigans. But it's you're good to cry, Jared. I just wanted to say that. Like everybody here is for you. But I mean, I cried watching the documentary too, but it was for different reasons. Because I mean, me growing up, I was called faggot all through middle school, high school, mostly just because I have somewhat of a flamboyant personality. Like I like clothes and I just dress differently than all the other yeehaw guys at school. So.
Yeah, growing up, you know, living in the same town as a Westboro Baptist church is, you know, you see it every day. They picket funerals, they picket street corners. You know, you drive by their compound and they have a huge banner that says GodHatesFags.com. And you're like, but on a lighter side, there's a Pride House right across the street that is painted in wonderful rainbow colors.
I love it.
Like it's just big,
you know,
big fuck you to those guys, motherfuckers.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know what? When you say that, you know, the thing is, it's like, do you know how many people are members of Westboro at this point? It's like under 100.
Yeah, it's just a family church.
Yeah. So, but think of how they've amplified that publicity-wise, and how much money they make off of that. Do you know what I mean? It's like the biggest con job in the world, and the people that they get to advertise them are the people that hate them. It's the same thing with, you know, it's like I could see
that it fuels the fire.
I noticed certain people in who give a lot of air to politicians who say really horrible things about gay people, but the people that are giving them air is the gay people calling them out. So they'll tag it 1,000 times and you see this thing, and like straight people have never seen it because they don't even know who this Joe Schmo is. You know what I mean? That's why that's really interesting to educate people about what to push and what not to push, and what to give air to, and that we have to become more, you know, sophisticated as human beings about, you know, because like a lot of this, like, I mean, I'm very ambivalent about Facebook at this particular time. I mean, I really do want to just shut it off. I can handle Instagram a lot better because it's just visual, and I like the communication with people. But I understand what, you know, I understand that as we play in the Facebook world, we're being brainwashed. I get that completely, and we're getting played. You know, it's like, you know, the new thing on the Washington Post today about like the Nazi symbols and, you know, the Trump campaign. You know what I mean? That's all Stephen Miller. I know exactly who Stephen Miller is. Trump is so stupid that he doesn't even know what this doofus is doing. You know, he's using Hitler's playbook, and anybody who has an education knows all of this is right out of Mein Kampf, and they also know that it's right out of Steve Bannon's. Steve Bannon called this many, many years ago. And what Steve Bannon did in Hollywood was he was a film producer, and he produced Left Behind movies, you know, like resurrection movies. And all of the people in the world, in the United States, all of us collectively, we know the mythology, whether we believe it or we don't. We know the mythology of the return of Jesus Christ. We know it. I mean, we're all raised with it. It's genetic. It so goes far back in our DNA that you can't not know it. And we all know the signs, you know, like when the end is coming. And then when somebody begins to play with those signs on purpose, you know, and say like, well, you know, if this would happen, then this group of people will believe that this is the return of Jesus Christ, right? Charlatans have done this throughout history, for thousands of years. It's like, oh, there's no mistake that, Trump made Jerusalem the capital of Israel. He knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't know, maybe, but the other people around him knew exactly. That was a dog whistle. That was a call to all believing Christians that Jesus was about to return. And, they changed the name of the city. That's it. But they've terrified the world. And we're in the middle of this religious terror right now. And you can call it whatever you want to call it, but it is all religious. It's a religious race thing that's going on here. And it's very, very dangerous. But, it's like, what do you do? Do you know what I mean? It's like, how can you have a conversation about this? Can you talk to somebody from West Virginia or Kentucky? Look at us. I mean, we're West Virginia, Kentucky, Missouri. And, we, Indianapolis, Indiana, we all know what we're talking about. And we're products of that culture, but we're not products of that culture. You know what I mean? There are lots of people like us. There are more people like us than there are people like them. It's just the us are not as vocal and demanding as they are. And people are afraid to be vocal. I mean, people are terrified of saying something because how people are terrified of Trump's Twitter. Well, I know so many people who are terrified of being shamed on Facebook, are being piled on. If I say this, then I'm going to really get piled on. Well, you're going to probably lose half your friends, but you know what? Your quote unquote friends, but A, they're not your friends anyway.
Yeah.
Half of them are not even real.
Yeah.
And there will be another couple of thousand to fill that 5,000 slot in 5 minutes. I could refill my page 100 times. I mean, I actually look at everybody that comes on there and they still fool me, but I think, oh, this is a normal person. This is like, oh, they have a real story. And then they show up with who they really are. And it's not them that you have to worry about. It's their friend list.
Yeah.
Because those are the people that will really pile on you. Those anonymous, crazy whack jobs from who knows where they're from. I don't know. Anyway, sorry. I can go on and on about this because I find it fascinating.
I understand completely the whole not speaking up thing because that's like my life in a nutshell. Like, I mean, I see stuff all the time at work and out in the stores, like whatever, but I just don't say anything of how I think or tell people that's wrong or stuff just because I'm one of those people, like, I don't care who you are or what you've ever done in your entire life. I don't want to be the person that makes you upset or hurts your feelings or makes you not like me.
I hear you.
And
when I was in therapy about this kind of stuff, like a long time ago, and my therapist said to me, oh, when we would get to this part of things, she'd say, Mark, well, I smoked, right, for many years, and smoking something you really want to look at. But I was like, she said, like when we get to things really tough, do you realize you stop breathing? And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, no, you hold your breath, you stop breathing. And I'm like, that's crazy. She goes, well, just notice it, as time goes by. And it's true, I did. When I wanted to say something, I would hold my breath. And because I knew, that in my world, the way I was raised, my dad would say, like, well, I know what you're thinking, and you could get hit for thinking the wrong thing, and he sort of had us convinced, which a lot of parents do, that they could kind of read your mind. Mm-hmm. And so I learned to hold my breath, to hold all this in so that I didn't get attacked, and there came a point in my life personally where I just had to breathe, because it was literally going to kill me, and I don't advocate anybody to go out and stand on the street corner and tell people off. But I do advocate where there will be moments in your life where you just have to You just have to say it. And you have to let people think that you're a bad boy, you know, because we were all raised to be the best little boys in the world, you know. Don't hurt anybody's feelings, don't make any waves, disappear, you know, be quiet, and everything will be fine. People won't notice you. I spent so much time, honest to God, I spent so much time trying to keep my life really small when my life wanted to get big. You know, I worked very actively to not be famous for 20 years. 20 years, more than that. I just got famous at everything that I did, and everything. I mean, as an interior designer, I got famous, and I worked for the richest people in the world. And as soon as that got right there in the pinnacle, or they wanted to put me in magazines, I pushed it away. And, you know, because I just didn't want people to see me, because I didn't want them to get mad at me. And I didn't want them to think that, I don't know, that I didn't deserve what I have, you know, because, and it goes back to what we were talking before, and this is, I guess this is turned into therapy, but I don't care. It's like, that, you know, where I came from, you know, Riverside, Missouri, Nashville, Missouri, you aren't supposed to make a lot of money, and you're not supposed to be famous. You're not supposed to make more money, and you don't deserve it. You know, because I didn't go to Yale Drama School. I just made it there on my own grit. You know, I didn't have an education. I'm just naturally, I'm smart, I'm intelligent, I'm articulate, I'm self-educated, you know, and I just didn't think that was deserving at all of an opinion. And now those are the only opinions that I will take. You know, I will take criticism from absolutely anybody. Absolutely anybody. If you're doing what I'm doing, I would take criticism from Nathan as a filmmaker, because Nathan's made a film, and I will listen to what he said. But if you haven't made a film and you're going to start critiquing how I make a film, I'm not interested in what you have to say. And it's the same way about standing up and being an activist civilly, you know, either for whatever, you know, your cause is. If you have something to say to me that's a critique and you're down in the gutter fighting with me, I'm good to go. You know, but if you're like, quoting Brene Brown, if you're sitting up in the cheap seats, if you're just the critic sitting up there telling me how I could do things better, I'm just like, fuck you. Because I'm down here bleeding and like in the shit, you know. Yeah. I'm taking the hit, you know.
I think,
and people like seeing me take the hit. That's what they want to see. They want to see the truth. And so if you can offer me that, then I'll take your word. That other than that, no, I'm not interested. Thank you. You know, share it with somebody else.
I saw it summed up really well. What you were talking about was Morgan Freeman put it beautifully. He said, "Don't ever take criticism from anyone you wouldn't go to for advice."
Right.
And that's exactly right. Like everything else, like I wouldn't listen to you. I wouldn't come to you for help. So why am I going to listen to your opinion that's uneducated or closed-minded or inexperienced? It's just your opinion. And you're going back to the whole thing of people aren't willing to be wrong or to learn. And the people who do change their minds are the people who are willing to be wrong and willing to learn and better themselves and say,
get down in
okay,
there.
Yeah, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I grew up in a homophobic world, or I grew up in a racist world. Like I said, we all come from those areas, but we were seeking something better. We realized there was something wrong with it, and we sought to better ourselves and learn better. And that's really what it is to experience life, to experience that there's something beyond where you're at. And people are, I mean, that's what it really is. And that's what you do. You go out to Hollywood, you go out to all these places, and people fear that. Like I said, they think, oh, you're better than us. Or you think you're better than, you think you're smarter than us, and they just resent it. So instead of maybe opening themselves to, they just reject it and say, no, you're wrong, and I don't like you, and I won't listen to you. And I don't know. I get what you say, and you know, you helped me a lot.
It's like we're here to rise above, you know. And the thing is, it's like I love that with people that reverse things like just shut up. You know, you're an actor, just shut up. Mm-hmm. You know, probably half the world, their secret desire would be to be a rock musician or a famous actor. Everybody kind of, it's what, you know, like Miranda Priestley says, like everybody wants to be us, you know, which is true and not true. But I will tell you this, like if you get into the into the pinnacle of the filmmaking world or fame, you're not stupid. And you didn't get there by accident. It don't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by chance. You were ready and you played the game, and you got the game and you played it, right? So you can have an opinion about that. But if you came to me and asked me how to fix your car, my nephew is a great mechanic. He's a skateboarder and a mechanic, and he's brilliant. I don't know how to fix a car. And if I started to tell you about gears and all that kind of stuff, because I just wanted to sound like I knew what I was talking about,
Yeah.
you need to get as far away from me as you possibly can. You know what I mean? Because I don't even know how to open the hood. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you about other things, you know. But the smart man says, you know, at that moment, say, I don't know anything about cars. So don't ask me, and I'll just listen to you guys talk about cars. Because I could learn how to, I'm smart enough that I could learn to be a mechanic if I wanted to apply myself to it. The thing is, I don't want to apply myself. I would rather just pay somebody to fix my car.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm the same way about any kind of advice or information.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. You go with the people who, like you said, you know your place, you know what you're good at. Everybody has their expertise. The job that they do, they've done it 20, 30 years. They know it better than I could ever know it. Just like on the film set, that guy knows cinematography better than I do. I'm going to let him do his job. Makeup person. So it's like you respect each other because everybody's got that specialty that they have focused on and they have worked their asses off to do it. And that's, like you said, working on cars, playing a sport, cooking, whatever it is. Everybody has their knowledge. Right. And be open to that, and don't just say, well, if you know you don't know what you're talking about, then don't stick to your opinion so wholeheartedly. And I think a lot of people do that. Like, they have no frame of reference, but they'll tell you that, you know, David Mamet's a terrible writer, and like they've never written a letter to anybody. You know,
right. And they probably haven't even read David Mamet.
Yeah,
and the thing is, which is really funny. But you know, that's the thing too. It's like, you know, you can change the dynamic of anything. I discovered this maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, building a house. I was building a house for a client. I was building the house. I designed everything in this house, the furniture, the house, everything. I wasn't an architect, but I designed the house. There was an architect. And I learned very quickly on this house, because it was scary, because it was a lot of money. It was millions of dollars. And everything in it was made, handmade. And it was all coming out of my imagination. But then I was going to these other people and saying, and I learned the value of asking a question of an expert. Do you know what I mean? Like a craftsman. Like, I would go to the woodworker and say, tell me, you know, I think this, but would you tell me how I could do this? Can this be done? You know, not do it. It was like, how could it be done? You know,
is this crazy thing I'm thinking of possible?
Yes, is it possible? And you, as a master woodworker, how would you make that happen? And then I'm going to listen to you. And it changes the dynamic completely. And there will be a lot of people who say, oh, you can't do it. You know, and like, you move on past those people to the man who says, oh, yeah, you know, it's funny, I've been thinking about that for 20 years, and this is how I did it. And here, look, this is what you need. You know, and that changes the dynamic of everything when you frame things up as a question as opposed to, you know, but that's all ego too. You know, I mean, that's just, it's huge amount of ego of like, it, you know, comes with people who grew up like us, who didn't develop in the way that we did. It's like they don't want to appear to be stupid, so they just know everything. You know, and anything that they don't know is stupid. You know, and not to be contemplated. But that's just some abuse that threw on them sometime a long time ago. You know.
Yeah.
But it's toxic when you're around it. That's for sure. You know. So anyway, do you guys want to ask any other Elm Street? I took you down the road.
I that's one of the things about you and your film, especially Screen Queen, is that these are the conversations that are important for us to have, because that's what we need. And I think we're seeing that there have been steps happening in the world that are changing these things. Like I said, I remember we talked about your film. You know, when I was growing up in the 80s, homosexuality was just something so foreign to so many people in the Midwest and Kentucky and Missouri, all that it was this thing. And now that we're having these conversations, I think to just talk about a movie that everybody's talked about and seen in this group, this is more important to talk about, and especially to me. And again, education, opening up our, like, asking questions, being able to ask that question, not being afraid to be wrong or be uninformed. Because I always say that people say, I think it's not you're stupid, you're just not informed. You don't know about this thing. It's not that you don't know how to fix a car, it's just that's not what you focused on, but you know a whole lot about this. So if people are more able to put their guard down and say, I don't know, tell me, please tell me. And that's what I think that's what we're seeing with the Black Lives Matter is, like, people just don't know what they're really feeling, and they just assume, like, oh, it ain't that bad, or it's your fault, or it's like, no, listen, shut up and listen to them. Ask them
just
why.
listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost. I always say this thing with the trans people, which I think is really fascinating. It's like, with all, I can't keep up with the names. I'll be very honest with you. It's like, it's an alphabet soup to me, and it's like, I'm just like, I come from the time where everybody's gay. The lesbians are gay. I'm gay. We're all gay. Right. And I don't understand much of the labeling and the coding that's going on right now. But this is the rule. It's like, if your name is Frank and you want me to call you Francis, and you say, would you call me that's not Frank? Then it don't hurt me to call you Francis. And it takes nothing from me. And I don't have to understand anything except for that I'm being a nice human being.
Yeah.
And so, if we all come to the agreement that something is really horrible, then I'm just going to agree with and just not use those words. I mean, it takes nothing from me. I have to expand my vocabulary. But I was going to say this one thing, and I just want to round this up, and I'm going to run out of energy soon. So you guys know.
Yeah.
The thing about having these conversations is, I'm going to quote my friend Freddy Brown again, but you got to dance with the one that brung you, And what brung me to this party is Nightmare on Elm Street. Jesse was my invitation. Jesse was my platform. So I'll talk about Jesse until the cows come home, because that's what got me the ticket here, and he's the one that opens the door to the conversation that we're having right now, and Nightmare on Elm Street has opened so many doors for me and given me such a platform to shine in the world that I always have to honor that and say, it's like, you want to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street for the next 2 years, I can talk about it because I enjoy it and I know a lot about it. But I also know that, that all of these podcasts that I do are just an invitation to have this conversation, because this is generally where they end up, and as a really good thing. And you'll find that when your comments start rolling in today, that a lot of people are going to be touched by what transpired between us tonight, and it's going to mean something to somebody. And the way they got here was on an Elm Street ticket. So we just honor that and be cool with it and sell the merch, because that pays for the, t-shirts pay for the trip. That's how we buy the plane tickets. So anyway, but I am going to run out of time. So I'm going to kind of wrap this up, because I'm on one note and I'm plugged into it. I want to thank you guys for inviting me to come here tonight and to have this conversation with me, and to expose yourselves in the way that you do, and keeping the door open for me, because I'm on a mission. I really am. You all know it, and I just invite you to come along with me. Because we can change a lot of things in our own world. In our horror world, we've done remarkable things, and those bigots and those racists and all that kind of stuff, they're right here in our world. They're right in the room with us. Like they were in the room with me before about the homosexuality. And I've had so many men and women especially, come to me and say, I was such a homophobe. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. And, I had one girl make amends to me on, all the gay people that she'd ever harmed. And a part of me was like, you're seeking attention. But then the other thing is, I realized, no, this is absolutely real. She's doing this, and you got to honor it. You know what I mean? And so us in our horror world, which is a primary thing for us, you know, this is the field on which we're going to change minds. You know, a person at a time. You know, and you know, so just get out there and do the work and have fun and watch lots of movies. You know? Be Nancy. You know, you know, that's where I go.
Plus, the horror world's a great place to do it. I mean, because most horror fans, they were the freaks growing up, or they were the outcasts, and that's the thing. Like, I see a lot of horror fans who don't get all of this, and I don't understand it, because like you were in those shoes just in a different way. And I hope everybody realizes that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the horror people used to be the people I was afraid of. You know, when I first started going to conventions, I would see all these people, and they were the people that I was just terrified of. You know, like growing up. And then I was like, oh my God, they're just a bunch of oddballs. They're just a bunch of weirdos. They're just like as screwy as I am. And then I fell in love with them. You know, and they fell in love with me, and we're all friends now. You know, and we're genuine friends. I mean, I've sat in Hell's Angels place with Linnea Quigley and Camille Keaton, you know, at a biker bar, you know, as the Hell's Angels give us rides on a bicycle. And they love us, you know, and they wouldn't hurt me for anything in the world. So, you know, so it taught me some lessons. So anyway, so that's that for me. So I have to go now. Okay, because it's going to turn off. So I will just say goodbye and let you guys wrap this up.
We love you, Mark.
I love you, Mark.
Thank you very much.
Love you, Mark.
It was so much fun.
So much.
It was so good. And I'm glad the sound all worked. And I'm on your team, dude. I'm seriously on your team. So thank you very much for having me here. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Let's see if I can turn this off now. That's the tricky part, when you like got to turn it off and you're blind. And that's me right now. I'm flying blind. So hold on a second, and then I'll get you gone. Here we go. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, Mark.
Maybe.
We're going to talk about him.
I can't tell. Is he still on, or?
I don't know.
I don't know. Oh well, we can still wrap it up. It seems
Yeah,
like
let's go ahead and do the wrap up.
That was Mark Patton. You know him as Jesse from Freddy's Revenge. We love Mark. I know I do. And there's Heat Man. I could listen to him talk all day. He has so much to say, and it's all good stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
Thank him. I can't thank him enough for being on. Nate, thanks for getting him. Jared, thank you for sharing, man.
Yeah.
I know it's painful for you. We love you too.
Like I
know. We love you though, Jared. It sucks that you have to see that shit. But anyway, I want to thank everybody who was with us tonight. We'll be back on Tuesday with something else.
Do closing thoughts on it. Even though Mark's gone,
if you got time, go do some closing thoughts.
Yeah. I think let's do closing thoughts.
Good.
Let's do it.
Who wants to go?
Seth, you go first.
Yes, Seth, quiet boy.
I said a word all night. Go ahead.
Oh, hey guys. I don't know. I mean, I've always loved Elm Street 2. There's something about the early films that I really enjoyed. And the special effects and the acting's really good. My only complaint is I don't think the resolution was very satisfying. But other than that, it's an enjoyable movie, and I watched it quite a bit. It was cool listening to Mark, talk about everything, and yeah, that's about it. I really love that movie, and
even Mark said he wasn't happy with the resolution at the end. So
right,
it's one of the biggest criticisms of the film. It's not a satisfying ending.
Right, and one of the questions I was gonna ask him was where he thought Jesse was after the movie, but he kind of explained where he has it in that book he wrote. So
yeah, is that a book series or
He
what
put
is that?
them out, like he self-published them. The Jesse's Lost Journals.
Yeah, I want to get into that.
Yeah.
You're too young, so I'm too young.
I'm too young. Yeah,
I'm
Way too young.
definitely too young.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah, I've been meaning to get them. Who's next on a closing thought?
Keith, you go, Keith. Oh,
I believe Nightmare 2 was probably, I want to say, my third or fourth Elm Street movie, somewhere around there. I know New Nightmare was my first, but I think it was the Chiller channel. They always used to show like
Wow.
Nightmare 2 through like 5. They just showed all of them but the first one and New Nightmare. But I always liked 2. I mean, 1, you get to connect more with the story because it is a male lead instead of a female. So for me anyways, I instantly got to connect with it more. And Jesse's dad was kind of always reminded me of my grandfather. Like he is stern, but like in a good way.
Because well, you're my son, and he reminds me of my dad. Totally, like that is my dad all the way. Like I even told Jack Shoulder that. I was like, Clue in that. I told Clue, I was like, you reminded me of my dad growing up. Like that part where he tells him to go back upstairs and clean his room right now.
Yeah.
It's totally my dad. And my sister had a parakeet, so the whole chirping in the house all the time.
Did you stomp back up the stairs too?
I didn't stomp because my dad would have whooped my fucking ass if I stomped up. That belt would have came off, and he'd be chasing me up downstairs.
Well, my thing with him was always whenever his wife is telling him that he needs help and needs to see a psychologist, and he's like, "No, what that boy needs is a good
goddamn good kick in the butt."
Yeah, you can kick in the butt. Like that's my grandfather. Like he means it. He means it in a sweet way, but he's not a dick. But I always love that movie. I love the transformation scene. I mean, I've always liked that movie. I like it more than 3. I mean, I think it was third on my nightmare list. Like 3 always seems to be the one everybody likes.
I shudder to ask where the 4th one is. I can't trust you anymore.
It's that cheap seed you've been buying.
It's a cheap seed.
I love that one. While the bird exploded.
Jared, do you have some final thoughts you want to share with us?
I just apologize for getting a little over emotional.
Do not apologize.
Don't need to apologize.
Do not apologize. Not at all, man.
Mm-mm.
Not at all. I can't say I understand, but don't ever apologize for getting emotional, man. I love you. You know I love you.
Living where I live it, you see it every other day, and
you know what? Fuck those people and come live with me up here. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Don't apologize, man. I'm glad you were able to share that, and I know it was hard for you. I'm very happy you shared with us, and Mark.
Ray will get you all the tuna melts you want. Even if you
draw the line at tuna melts. I draw the line there. Okay. I'm the next thinking up my house with tuna melts, dropping them all over the floor. Do you have anything you want to say about Nightmare 2?
Me?
Yeah.
I love the dance scene.
Yeah.
Always. I mean,
I did
movie,
too.
That movie was so different. Like, you know, we discussed a lot of it. I'm kind of stuffed up because I'm fucking teary-eyed shit. But like one of the things when I watched this the other night that I didn't realize is how much he was so devoted to the female's character, and it just didn't play out but they were best friends and shit. You know, there's this problem here. I don't know. Sorry.
You're good, Jay.
You're good, bud, man. Don't say sorry.
I'm fucking verklempt right now, man.
The dance scene, I think, is everybody's favorite. I mean, me growing up, like, that was, I mean, that's me on a daily basis when I'm by myself. I'm dancing downstairs to get breakfast and
closing the drawer with your butt.
I will, maybe.
Does he still hate that scene? That's one thing I want to ask.
because Roman talked about that. They just decided to take it back and embrace it and make
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
That's
that's
why they put
right,
it on
that's
the
right.
poster.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I wanted to mention. The doc is amazing. If anybody watching hasn't seen the doc, go watch it.
It's
I think
on Shudder.
I've watched it 2 or 3 times now. It's really good.
Yeah. Nathan, go ahead and close us out with your final thoughts.
I had a few things, like I was,
Buckle in,
I
everyone.
was wanting to tell Mark. Well, I wanted to tell Mark, like I have felt this when I watch the films, all of them, and I share a lot of people share this feeling. What he said about what Clue said to him, he does give, in my opinion, the strongest performance in the entire franchise.
Mm.
The most sincere, I believe it. That scene after he kills Grady and he's yelling at Freddy in the mirror is Oscar-worthy material for that movie. Like when you watch that, I feel him. I feel it, and it is an amazing performance. And then, bam! Right after it, where he goes to confess to Lisa at her house, where his hands in blood, and like it's an incredible performance. And he's right. We missed out on an amazing performer.
I know.
And it just sucks. It sucks that hate led that to happen, fear led that to happen, and God damn it, we got to get past this shit. It's just the bullying, like that. That's what, and again, that's what led me to that film. I was 12 years old. I was a new kid in school. I was sensitive. I was quiet. I was called faggot. I was targeted because I was sensitive, because I was quiet, because I was vulnerable, and I was never homosexual. I've always been straight, but I know what it was. To be put out, and I don't know how. It just makes me sympathize more with homosexual young people, in that, as bad as it was for me,
it had to be worse for them.
How hard is it to have people hate you because you are who you are?
Mm-hmm.
Like I wasn't what they were hating me for. Like, but to be, and that goes with any minority, anybody outside the white male straight realm is, they deal with that, and a lot of people still are too fucking hard-headed to empathize with that and listen and understand. Just go, no, we all matter. It's not that bad. It's like, look, those films helped me deal with my bullying. And that's what really worked for me. And like you said, like Keith was talking about, this genre is about outsiders. A lot of us came to this genre because we were looking for something that was outside the box and that fit us. So when I see this community so full of hate and ugliness sometimes, or dividing each other, putting people, I'm a true horror fan and you're not, and I blah this bullshit, it just get rid of it. When I see people, I'm sure hopefully no one comments on this post about bullshit homophobic stuff, but when people talk about this movie's gay as a negative thing.
So far, it's been all love.
Thank God. But I know, when we premiered, I'm so proud to be a part of Scream Queen in just the little way I was, and to be friends with Mark and Roman and Tyler, and just all three amazing guys, and and they were there at the premiere of Confession. It was a lot of the stuff in Scream Queen is at Horror Hound Weekend that weekend. Again, going back to my introvertedness, after my film screened, I was too afraid to go up there. I was shy because I'm shy, and it was a whole fucking room, a standing room only, and people were cheering, but I felt so apprehensive about going up there. And then someone started calling, "Is Nathan here?" And it was Mark. Mark was in front row. He got up, walked up front, and asked me to come down and take a bow. And I went up there, and he held my hand, and I bled my heart out. And it was 2 weeks after Wes Craven had passed away. And I said, everybody here is here because of what Wes created. And I'm friends with all these people. I'm friends with Mark and all this. And it was an amazing situation. I said, it's so amazing that my first film was Nightmare 2. That was the movie that made me a Freddy fan. That was the movie that made me a horror fan. And the first person you see is Mark Patton. He is the channel into that world for me. He identified with him. I was a 12-year-old, quiet, sensitive kid. That's all I saw in Jesse, was another sensitive young man who was being bullied, who was mistreated, and had the ultimate bully on his back, and he was able to overcome it and get through it. And so to have Mark there in that moment for me, my homage to the series that gave me so much, gave me a career. I may not be in horror because if it weren't for those films, and that film in particular.
We wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for that movie.
No, and you know, the last thing about Mark, you know, he talked about dealing with internet trolls and all that. When you go, especially being a sensitive, quiet person and then put yourself out there artistically, putting movies out there, art like that, you do immediately draw hate. You draw attention. You draw that, and it can get really hard to deal with. And when you yourself are a good person and you did nothing but fucking make a piece of artwork, and people hate your guts and want you to die, it doesn't make any sense. It's totally irrational. It's totally crazy, but it does bother you. And a lot of times I had trouble dealing with it. And Mark was somebody who wrote me a PM once or twice to just say, "Hey kid, you know, you just can't let them people get to you. It's like it's their problem. This just comes with it, and you just don't give them any energy. Don't give them any power." And he said,
Freddy.
yeah, and he just said, "Listen," he goes, "It's, you know, take it from this old man, buddy. I've been there." And I'm like, you know, that it meant a lot to me that he would reach out to me personally, recognize what I was feeling, knew what that felt like, and to pass that on to say, "Hey, put your chin up, man. You made a fantastic film, and you're a fantastic artist, and be proud of that, and don't let them beat you down and get you down." So it means a whole lot that Mark was on the show tonight. I was really excited to have him, and just to, you know, yeah, I mean, I owe so much to him and this film. That's my closing thought.
I appreciate that. This is a really great episode in many ways, not just having Mark on, but hearing him. And you know, he talks about acting came so natural, and it was what he was meant to do. I'm starting to think that he might be a little wrong. I think what he was doing on the show is what he was meant to do, speaking about everything that's going on. He you know, he could reach a lot of people and probably help a lot of people through a lot, because I mean, he's been there and he speaks so passionately. I love that dude. He's fantastic. It was great having him on.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you everybody for coming on the show. Or coming on, what the hell? Hold on.
We all need a hug.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, man, if Mark
I love you, man.
if he's traveling after all this pandemic stuff happens and he's at a convention, we all go, and we need to go like do a group hug with Mark.
I'll give him a big fucking hug.
Yeah, hell yeah. Hell yeah. I need to find out a way to send him a horse syndicate shirt. I want to send him a horse syndicate shirt. I don't know why. I probably because I want everybody to have one because they're cool.
I want to apologize, guys, about my stuff. I'm sorry.
You can keep apologizing, but you don't need to, man.
Yeah, you don't need to apologize. I'm the only one that needs to apologize. We didn't have audio at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, that's correct. You are the one that needs to apologize. Damn it. Anyway, next week, I think we have another show on Tuesday. I think it's Zombieland. I'm not 100% sure.
I believe it is Zombieland.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Zombieland movies. I'd like to get some more guests on here. We talked about maybe some other Elm Street children, so maybe that'll happen. Thanks again, everyone, for coming out and watching the show and being a part of the Horror Syndicate. Seth, Keith, Jared, Nathan Thomas Milliner. Excuse me.
You don't have to do that anymore.
It's a running joke. Thanks for being on the show, and
just not an honest, not a true one.
Right. So join us Tuesday, and have a good night. And check out Scream Queens on Shudder, and I think you can get Shudder for 30 days using the promo code Scream Queen. Okay, we'll see you next week.